All right, so I wanted to talk today about kind of what I found out. It's like for me, is a really big revolution on how I found these. Um, so the number seven I had been thinking about for like a long time, like for years and years and years. I've been like, oh my God, seven has been so important, and I looked up all the different ways that seven was going to be important, and I mean, this has been many, many years. I was obsessed with like, why is the rainbow, why has it got seven? Like, why doesn't it have five or four or three? And I knew that that's what we see. So what we actually have with our vision, the things that we see, are always going to be things that are the most important. And then when I found out that the sound is also sevenths, because it goes by sevenths until you get to the octet, which is weird. That we have an octet, so it goes 1 through 7. And then at the end, you go and it comes back around again. And so then I figured everything is 7, which it does turn out that everything is. All of our dimensions are 7, and that's made, and I finally found out because we have 7 different archetypes. And these 7 different archetypes are for then the 3 different things that we are made of. Now, how do we know? Well, first off, we know we have a body. And we also know we have a mind, because we think, right? The third thing is, and I obviously know I have a soul, and I think everybody does, right? So like we've had for a long time the thought that those 3 things are absolutely the truth. And there are not only 7 of the, for the rainbow, when you put it on a white background. If you put it on a white background, you'll see the 7. So it'll split into the 7 different colors, like from a prism or from a droplet of water. If you put it on a black background, you actually see 3 colors. And what I believe that is the mind, body, and spirit. And the mind, body, and spirit then are those things that are that make up. And this is why I was like, I never was really like a tarot person, but then when I got into like tarot, as far as like, you know, looking at the cards, I was like, what? So there's 7. And then the 3 different ones, the mind, body, and spirit, all 3 of those go through the 7. And so what the tarot is just a way to explain how you experience life. And each part has important things in it. So there are a couple of things that you have to know. First off, obviously there's male and female. And so this is important in the fact that those 2 things make up who and what we are, and the reason that we actually have male and female is the 2 different characteristics we're supposed to learn from. This whole thing is about experience. How do we experience life? And so the tarot isn't about some crazy witch stuff. See, that's what they want you to think. You know, this religious people and the people of medicine and every other part, government, everybody, you're like, no, you're just simply trying to figure out how reality is. I want to know, I want to learn. Like, everybody wants to learn, like, what is reality? So it is those 7 things, and that's why it is 7. And we'll go through, and it actually is from the archetypes of the tarot. So, I should probably also go into the fact that this started a long time ago. So this started like literally 100 quadrillion years ago. So there is only history for 100 quadrillion years ago. There really isn't any other history past that time. Anything past that would be meaningless. Although I'm sure that there was existence. But the first recorded would be at that time. So it turns out that then in the beginning there was just the three mind, body, and spirit. So you just had the three different things, and so what you would see for light, if there was something you would see, you would actually see three things of light, and then sound would be split up into three different ways, and we would have three different senses, and then we would have, a lot of this stuff that we're trying to see. Those things then are how we experience life, so we want it to be from that number. That's why our vision and our hearing is both off of 7, because it wants to tell you this is how to do it. It's a blueprint, or it's color coded, right? Literally, they're color coding your life so you can understand it. It's very difficult. So there's only one way to do it, and that's make it simple. So off of those first three, there was the matrix, the potentiator, and the significator. And those are big words, and I really had a hard time with them. Like in the beginning, it was so difficult. I just kept reading again and again. I read the definition. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to kind of make it a little easier for you, because it didn't make any sense to me. It still doesn't. The potentiator just blows my mind. I don't know what that word means. I don't know what it means. It confuses me. It's not any word we use, so it really doesn't help. So I'm going to come up and tell you what it is for each one of them. So the first part, the matrix, that's just what we see. And yes, the movie Matrix, about this, it's our world. So it's not actually the true world, which I'll go into later. But the matrix is just our conscious mind. So we have our conscious mind, and then we have our subconscious mind, right? And our subconscious mind, that's where we get into the potentiator. All right, and that's where we find out if things are potential. Just think if they're possible, feasible, doable, just if it is going to be able to happen. And so you have those two different things, your conscious and your subconscious. And in the beginning, there was no veil. So your mind could kind of communicate between the two. Whereas now, there is a very big veil. That veil goes right between those two parts of the mind, and it's very complicated. So the third one is the significator. The significator says, hey, you have an idea in the conscious mind, and then the subconscious says, oh, this is possible, this idea is possible, we worked it around, and the significator then says, oh, okay, so now I've made this into a specific concept. And that one ideal theme concept is then something that you can understand. And that was for a long time, but nothing really kind of proceeded. And at the time, we actually didn't have free will. You could choose it, but here's the thing, without the veil, you actually, you see everybody else as yourself. They literally are you. And there's no real distance. They're really there with you all the time. You never feel separation. You never feel lonely. You always feel with God. You are literally on God's lap at all points in time. So at no time would you be mean or angry to the other person and serve yourself, because that other person is yourself. So service to others was everybody. It was everybody and everything and all of the time. But it proceeded along super slow, and it was a problem. I mean, if it takes you 1 billion years, 1 trillion years for you to progress, I mean, how fun is that? Is it really worth living if you're actually going to be having it take that long of a time, that period that is just foreverness? Well, so what they did is they gave free will. Now this was always possible, but nobody ever chose it. So then they were like, oh, I'm going to choose free will. And that's where we came into our mind-body-spirit complex. because we had a veil, and the veil between the conscious and the subconscious. And once we created the veil between the conscious and the subconscious, right, where you can't see it. I can't tell what's happening at night, and in the daytime, my subconscious can't tell. Now, it can have parts of it because the veil is see-through somewhat, but you can't completely see through it, and we're not talking. It's not like, no, it's just kind of barely seeing through. So, once we've created the veil, then the body complex and the spirit complex then just followed, because obviously if your mind is split, your body has to be split. And before the veiling, your body, you could slow and raise your heart rate. Blood pressure was never a problem. So you could raise or lower your blood pressure. All diseases were taken away if you wanted to. And of course, even at that time, they did have diseases, because you would at one time want to make sure you have your life, and even though at that time maybe the lives were 70,000 years. Well, at some point, you're going to be weary of that life and want to start anew. Start another life, or go into where you're not in a life like this with the Matrix, and where you're just in the interstitial planes, the inner planes, of which you are just you're just a soul, and your body is made up from your pineal gland, or not from your pineal, but the sixth chakra. It just forms a body, and that body is more like a gaseous type of a thing. It can move and whatever, but it's formed and it is a body. It's not really a body as we feel it. You can't touch it. It is just a thought form. So really, you just have the mind and the spirit. And you live as that probably most of the time. It's where you do a lot of healing and all the other stuff. Well, anyway, so let's go get on to where the 7 is. So actually, the 7 is going to be very important, because it's made up of the 7 different things, right? We have the 3, and those have to be part of it. So the first part is the conscious mind. The second is the subconscious. The conscious is the male part, and the subconscious is the female part. Because the male is the reaching part, and the female is the understanding part. The one that is actually going to be, is this going to be doable? Remember, we talked about that. So the actual mind here, and we'll talk about the 7 as an idea concept, or just something we want to do. So you have an idea, and you're looking for all these ideas, and of course that's what the mind does. The mind looks all over for all of these ideas. Once it finds an idea, and the conscious mind says, oh, this thing is possible. So what happens is you have something, and it's actually, and so that's the, and it is male and female and sexual, and the fact that you are reaching, and the ideas don't work until you get penetration, and then you start to form an idea. Then it goes and becomes the third part, which is the experience. And the experience and the next one, which is the catalyst, kind of go in hand. The experience is also the female part. It then becomes pregnant, and pregnant in as far as that idea has become some sort of a concept that is being known and to be able to be understood. It works with the catalyst is the female part, and the male part then is the experience. And those two work together, and until this pregnant part can be grasped, once you grasp that, then this becomes an idea. And once that happens, that goes to the significator. Remember, those are the first 3 of the beginning. And then that one right there, the significator, says, okay, this is a main concept, idea, theme, and I'm going to run with this. So this is the 5th one. Now there's only 2 more, right? So remember, there's 7 colors, right? So we're on the last 2 of those things. And so the transformation is 6, and then the way, the great way, or like you're then sending it on its path. Now, if you look at the tarot cards, it is, there's like a chariot. And so like it's going to send it along its way. So once it's had that concept and you've brought it in, you're going to be taking it in, and then you're going to send it from the transformation. It transforms from an idea and then is left out into space. And then a lot of people, for manifestation, this is important. I mean, you start, right, with the first, you have an idea, then you have it and it comes back in, right? That's the second, right? Once you grasp it, once it becomes impregnated and grasped by the experience, then the significator, you know, once you reach it, you find it, you pregnate it, you grasp it, and then it becomes a significant idea, but you have to let it go. It has to go off into the universe somewhere, so it is transformed from an idea to something that then goes the way. And here's the thing, really have not talked very much about the actual, the way. And the way, you have a decision. You got to serve, is this going to be service to self or service to others? Now, the service to self is, and I believe this will show as the right-hand path. Service to others is the right-hand path. Service to self is the left-hand path. If you're just going to serve yourself, it's left hand. If you serve others, it's the right hand. And you have to choose which path you're going to choose. That's how they actually have 22. And the number is 22. So you have, right, the 7, right? You have the 7 from the mind, 7 from the body, and 7 from the spirit. So that's 21. How do you get 22? Because you'll see 22 cards. Well, they actually added one more. And that's where you get 22. And you've always wondered this as a mathematician. See, this whole thing also has to do with math. Because I love math. And everything always had to do with math. So I always wondered, why do they use 22 divided by 7 for pi? I used that for years. I thought to myself, after I figured out it was the 7 coming from the different archetypes that actually made up our reality, I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense. You also have to understand, like, just the main concept and what it has to do with each part of everything. And I'm going to also show you how that part, so I want you to think about this. So right now, when you focus on a face. And the face is actually a square, and the square represents the manifest world, the matrix. It represents life. This part right here, from your eyebrows out, down, and chin line, that is the square, right? We take the square, it is out here. It actually turns out, if you go with a unit square, you can actually then make what is the phi. Phi is 1.618. It is made up of the addition and average of oneness, 1, right? So when you have a unit square, it is 1 by 1 by 1 by 1, right? 1 times 1 is 1. It is one thing, and that is the unit square. That represents the male part, the matrix, and it is part of the thing. So that's how we see things. So this is our visualization. That's 1. But what is phi? Phi is the curved part with the matrix. So when you mix both of those together and you take 1, which is the face, and then add it to the female part, now that part is a little bit harder, and I'm going to have to show you the math. But I want to show it to you on my face, because the thing you look at is always the face. It's always the face, and it is the thing that you look at. It is the most important thing, because that's what you see every day. And you'll see it in every person, and even every animal, every flower. You'll see this because it has the representation of the two things, the male and the female. The male represented as the matrix, represented as materialism, as represented for that as the square. So all of the lines are going to be square. All of the curves are going to be female. So how do you get female out of the male? Well, if I have this, right? Let's say I was to go halfway through, right? And I go halfway and I can draw from my face, right? Let's see, and right about here is about halfway up. So if I drew a triangle that went up here and across here, right? So this part's easy to see because it actually connects right on through. If you go halfway down and then you connect it, now this line goes from this dimension, this is a one dimension, right? From here to here, that's the top part of the square, right? And if you go halfway down, right? Because I'm going to go halfway. There is a reason why you go halfway. I'll kind of explain that to you later. But if you go halfway down, I've got myself a triangle where this is 1 and this is a half. And so it turns out, this is the weirdest part, kind of freaky, that there has to be something that goes across, and it is a dimensional cross. And how do you do a dimensional cross? Well, this is the problem. Because I can have 1 and 1/2, and those things are whole numbers. When you have that, that's that square root number that nobody understands. And that's the problem. So once you take this and have it across, 1 times 1 is 1, so that whole part is a whole nother 1. And if you take half and half, you're going to get a 4th. Well, it turns out that if you use the Pythagorean theorem, and you take this part right here, from here halfway down, you have to cross it. It makes that part, which is the dimension, which has the thing that crosses the dimension, and it turns out to be the square root of 5/2. And the reason that's going to be important is because that's actually what makes up your face. Crazy enough, if you take your hand, right, and you move it from here to here, that is going from the spot that I had, right? This is the halfway point, right? Goes up, and then it comes up, and then it makes the rest of your face. This part right here is the curve. That's the curve of your face, and that is the female part of it. And you have to add that because we're averaging half of the square, right? Plus the half, because that's why this thing was a half, right? Because I wanted this thing to be half of the square root of 5. And to do that, I had to go halfway up. So I wanted to go bam, and it is square root of 5/2. So it is halfway, or half of square root of 5. This is 1, right? This whole thing, our face is a square, so this whole first thing is 1. And when you add the two up, that's the average. Average is actually taking half of one thing, half of another, and adding it together. So that's how you get your face. That's how you understand then how the matrix, your face, the square part, goes with the female part, the part that connects the two dimensions. Going from the dimension and then this down being 90 degrees, and each dimension must have 90. I'll explain to you also degrees, 90 degrees, how 90 degrees is important in dimensions and male and female and time and space. Those are other points that have to be addressed at some point. But the main thing is I wanted to figure that part out for you to understand the male and female part and what we're talking about in our discussion. So we have the 7 of them, and those 7 things are the understandings, and a lot of it has to do with the male and the female. The male that grasps, and the female that takes in, that is penetrated. This penetrates, this is penetrated, then this is impregnated, and this is why the female is the giving, the loving, the nurturing. It is taking in. Whereas the male is the grasping. It's more of the financial part. It has all to do with that which is getting. And so then financials then obviously have a more trivial part of their life and who they are. Anyhow, so those are the 7, and that's how your face then works in, and I worked in dimensions. I could go into time and space, but that seems like a lot. I think you guys have learned a lot in this whole part. I hope those 7 have worked out at least a better understanding of what things are. And I think that's probably about good for now. So, wrap it up. We have the 7 different ones, and we have 3, the mind, body, spirit. And that thing was made complex by the veil. First with the mind, and then the body, and the soul, which are all mind, body, spirit complexes. Those things then make up the world, and is why we see 7 different colors. 1/7 is part of a sound, all the way goes to an octet, and why we live in an octet at the end. We actually, just to give you a little quick little thing before we go, we are in the dimension of 3. So you start as a element. You then go as an animal, vegetable. You can be anything like that. Something that grows. Something that has then understood growth. Because in the beginning, you're one, you're an element, you're being. You're just a being. You have things. You just, beingness is everything. Then growth. You see the upward spiraling. And that I'll explain with the pyramid, healing, spiraling energy is done, and that's through the understanding of the matrix and being able to bring things into reality, and why light does certain things, and I'll kind of go through that later. Also, then we have the kind of lost my train of thought, but we have all of those, and then so we've got the 7. They're built off of the 3, and that's why everything happened, and it was kind of awesome. So hopefully this was a little bit helpful. I'm going to go on into a bunch of other stuff. It's going to be, I'm going to have a book eventually about this, but I think this is about enough for now, because this is enough to really kind of blow your mind. So I think I'll leave it at that. Go in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. Thank you.